Detroit Den 303. Welcome back, Steve here. I'm going to have another banger of a Detroit Lions episode for you. Before I get into it, hit that subscribe button, stick around, join this Detroit Den 313 family. We'd love to have you. Yesterday, I did an episode on a path to the Super Bowl, what it's going to take for the Detroit Lions to get there. I thought it was a good episode. I had a lot of fun talking about it. Check that one out. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of that. In yesterday's episode, for those of you who haven't watched it, I gave 3 things that I think the Detroit Lions need to nail to get to a Super Bowl, and it was Jared Goff, the defense, and coaching. Today, I'm going to focus a little bit more on that defense. I'm going to talk about some guys that I think are being forgotten about. I'm not going to say any names you don't know, obviously, if you're a diehard Detroit Lions fan, but I will talk about some guys that I think are flying under the radar. They're flying low, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just not a lot of news, not a lot of talk, not a lot of attention on these guys, and that's okay. Sometimes those guys that fly under the radar show up in the season and they shine the brightest. But let's talk real quick about James Houston. James Houston, 6th-round draft pick in 2022, didn't really play a lot his rookie year until I think it was that Thanksgiving game against the Bills, I believe. I could be wrong on what game he really appeared in. He came in and was just started wrecking the league. 7 games played, 8 sacks, almost ended Trevor Lawrence's career against the Jaguars. He rolled him up like a gator roll tackle. I thought Trevor really tore his ACL the way he went down, but he kind of walked off gingerly. I was glad to see Trevor come back in the game. But James Houston, there's a reason they call him the problem. He's a tough assignment. Here's the thing. We've talked about James Houston a lot in the past. It's been a while. We haven't mentioned his name. It's probably been a few months if I really had to dive back into the Detroit Den 313 archive. So it's been a little bit. This whole offseason, including like the NFL draft, free agency, everyone was wanting that big name defensive end, someone to play that edge on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson. I was on board with that. I was all about it in the draft. You know, I wanted to get someone in our first round. I was hoping for a Latu Latu, someone of that caliber. Didn't happen. Had to sit back, had to look at it, had to look at some of our free agent signings, had to look at some of the guys that are already on this roster, like a James Houston, and say, can they get it done? And I kind of given this defensive end position on the other side of Hutch like a bullpen type category. Hey, we might not have one guy that's going to come in here and get 10 sacks. We might have 5 or 6 guys who can equal us up to about 12 or 13, and it's going to be just the same. It doesn't matter. As long as we're getting the production, the pressures, the QB sacks, DJ Reader on the defensive line is going to be a huge difference maker. But James Houston, the flash that we saw from him at the end of 2022, when he came in about halfway through the season, it got fans really, really excited. I think he had the absolute highest expectations going into last year, but he got hurt early. I think it was the Seattle game. He got hurt on a special teams play, if I'm not mistaken, kickoff return or something like that, if I remember right. And we we're just like, why is James Houston out there on kickoff return? But whatever, you know, it happened. He didn't really get to play. I broke his ankle. What we saw from James Houston at the end of 2022, though, was exactly what we're hoping we have in 2024. Someone to rush the passer, someone to get after it. Is James Houston going to be the main guy playing that Sam linebacker? Now, I will say this. James Houston, what he's really, really good at is speed. He is very, very fast, and that's hard for a lot of those bigger, lesser athletic left tackles in the league, but trust me, in the NFL, there's a lot of tackles who are very, very, very athletic. But he can win. He can win with speed. The problem is that's kind of his number one trick. That's his number one pony. That's what he's really going to try to push. So I want to see how much he's grown adding to his pass rush arsenal, seeing what else he could do. Does he develop some type of bull rush? Because I've seen pictures of him, man. This dude is jacked. Like, he's a big guy. ESPN has him listed as 6'1", 245. I don't know. He might be a little bit heavier now, a little bit more muscle on him, but 6'1", 245, and ESPN, I know they usually fluff the numbers a little bit. So who really knows? But James Houston, man, he's built solid. Does he develop a bull rush move? Can he do a rip, a swim? Does he have a nasty, like Dwight Freeney type spin move? I think he's going to be the main guy on that opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson that's going to need to produce the most. Also, we got a guy by the name of Marcus Davenport that the Detroit Lions brass brought in. I've had questions about Marcus Davenport. It's not whether or not he can play football. It's whether or not he can be healthy to play football. Last year with Minnesota, only played 4 games. The year before that, 2022 with New Orleans, he played 15. And then other than that, 15 is the most games he's played, which is pretty good. You know, it's hard to play 17 straight games in the NFL and not get banged up. It's a big man sport for a reason. You know, bumps and bruises, tweaks happen. But his best production came in 2021, where he only played 11 games and he had 9 sacks. That was probably his best season. This is a guy who has all the talent in the world. This is a guy who knows how to play football. He knows how to put a pass rush on 6'6", 265. He was perfect size for a defensive end. If that 2021 Marcus Davenport shows up, DJ Reader in the middle, Aleem McNeil, Aiden Hutchinson, if that's your D-line with our revamped secondary, we're going to be sitting pretty good. So like I said, the question about Marcus Davenport is health. And I think obviously Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, they're very familiar with Marcus. Going back to their Saints days, they were involved with him heavily. He was drafted by the Saints. He was there for 5 years. So they know what kind of player they're getting. They have that familiarity. Now, I've talked about 2 defensive players. One kind of a Sam linebacker / defensive end, pass rusher, whatever category you want to throw James Houston in. I've talked about Marcus Davenport. There's one more little X factor. His name's Terrell Williams. He came from the Tennessee Titans, our defensive line coach. Dan Campbell has said many times that he's the best in the business. And if you're not a diehard football fan, if you're not familiar with the Tennessee Titans, I will tell you on that defensive line, they were very, 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 very solid. They have a guy by the name of Jeffrey Simmons that was a free agent last year. I was begging for the Detroit Lions to make the call. Unfortunately, Tennessee re-signed him, locked him up long-term. Wasn't an option no more. But that was my number 1 target last year. So I guess if I have to miss out on a guy like that, I'll take a guy like Terrell Williams who can come here and coach up Aiden Hutchinson, who's very young. Still got a lot to learn. Still got a lot to really hone in and fix all his, really finesse his skills up even more. Take some of these young guys like a James Houston. You know, you got DJ Reader. You got mentors on this defensive line that are going to help these young guys. I'm excited. This Detroit Lions team is going to go as far as the defense takes it. I've said it a million times. I don't like repeating it, but we know what we're getting on offense. We're stacked. We didn't really have to go out this season and address much. We drafted for some depth. We signed Zeitler to shore up that Jonah Jackson spot that we lost. Upgrade there, in my opinion. Offense, we know what we're getting. Jamison Williams due for a breakout year. We lost Josh Reynolds. We got like 65 targets to spread out. We have more than enough options to spread that football out to make up for Josh Reynolds' production. Defensively is where the questions lie. On paper, this defense looks like it could be one of the best in the NFL. On paper, it looks like a top 10, but you guys, if you know me, you know my feelings. I could look at paper all day. When I show up on Sundays, I need to see it translate to a football field. That's my biggest thing. You can have all the hype in the world. When it comes time for the lights to come on and the ball goes up in the air and it's time to play ball, I need to see some results. I mean, that's just the name of the game. It's a win now business, not a look at me on paper business. But I am excited for this defense. I'm excited. We have a great coaching staff, Terrell Williams, Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, Calvin Shepard, all those guys. We're going to be okay on defense. We're going to be better. I know we're going to be better because Brad Holmes has invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of capital into this defense just in this season alone, throughout free agency, throughout the draft, throughout trades for Carlton Davis. But I really think that the 2 most important, most overlooked players are going to be James Houston and Marcus Davenport. I think those guys are going to be rotating in and out in some type of way of that, the opposite end of Aiden Hutchinson. And I know we got Kaminsky. I know we got Josh Paschal. I know everyone's really excited about Matthew Betts. Like, there's a lot of guys. That's why I call it the bullpen. There's plenty of guys who can rotate into that spot or that 2 spot if you can play the Sam linebacker, if we can switch out those DNs and the Sam linebacker, all depending on what the other team's doing formation-wise, personnel-wise. We match up very well, guys. So leave it in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about James Houston, Marcus Davenport. I think they're 2 of the most overlooked players that going into this offseason, and that's perfectly fine with me. Let's let them lay low. Let the season start. Let these boys come out with the bang, guys. Leave it in the comments. Hit that like button. Stick around. Subscribe. I'll be back later with another show.